thank you for joining us. Today is Tuesday, January 30th, 2024. Time currently is 5:36. Roll call. Buell Januzzi,
Here.
Amy Oliver, Dennis Kuhn,
Here.
Daniel Slater,
Here.
Craig Barron.
Present.
We have 4 members present, 1 absent. We have 5:37.
Am I it? I guess I'm it. I'm sorry. Okay, let's go to our agenda. Agenda item number 2 is review the outdoor lighting code draft. And I don't have one.
I don't either.
So I thought this was a get input from the audience, right? So,
That was not my understanding, is that we were supposed to review the draft that the subcommittee had put together. I thought Amy was taking care of getting that uploaded.
so I just had a copy.
And I don't have one with me. I'm not even sure. I have it electronically. Amy was putting it all together based on our previous supplement.
We're expecting to get a copy of that so that we can review it, see whether everything's okay.
Right, the only thing that was left that we hadn't finalized during the last meeting was
There was, section 401 and the table, which we don't have here for discussion. We have,
what approach did it might, so we can make some use of this time. What
Yeah.
approach did you end up adopting for the table?
so given the input which was that we still wanted to favor the warmer sources, we felt that having a lumen multiplier based on lamp source was the appropriate way to handle
So
that.
you were gonna have one table, assuming which light source, LED or non-LED?
I don't remember what we were multiplying from, but the bottom line is that it was allowing commercially available warm LED at like 2200 Kelvin to give the light levels that would have been achievable with high pressure sodium on the 2012 code.
Okay.
And it had ratios that scaled others accordingly, but were not as severe as that first draft that came out and didn't get a very good reaction.
But you weren't gonna do the multiplication for people and have multiple versions of the table. You were gonna,
It's basically a single table, but it does give you the ability, are you doing a combination of full cutoff and unshielded versus 100% full cutoff? There was,
yeah, I'm anticipating confusion.
well, there may be some, but
Wanting to know which multiplier to use, but you guys worked that out.
yeah, the idea was if somebody just slows down and considers it for a minute, you essentially have to qualify each light fixture type that you're using on a project and apply that lumen multiplier based on the rated color temperature of the project. If you're using amber LED, it's a positive multiplier. You can even put more lumen in it. If you're going all the way to 3000 Kelvin, it'll be a less than 1 multiplier. But the reason for using the multiplier is that if we're trying to encourage people to use warmer light, then we have to give some advantage to using the warmer light. If we're gonna protect the dark skies and allow 3,000 Kelvin, and we just present the one choice of white light being 3,000 Kelvin, well, then we've got to turn the screws down on that, or we're gonna lose dark skies because there's too much blue. So what this method does is if someone has a large area that needs to be fed and color rendering isn't particularly important, they can put more lumens in of that more benign light source. And if they want to use 3,000 Kelvin or anywhere in between for aesthetics, they can do so, and it's a designer's choice how much of 3,000 versus the other that they use. And then it's just a matter of being able to document that.
Okay, and then, so the subcommittee was on the original table, just wasn't formatted yet, or?
It had not been formatted. I ended up giving Amy a handwritten version that all three of us on the subcommittee agreed to. And she was going to get it typed up and get it distributed.
And I wasn't able to make the last meeting. What's the current approach to splitting parcels? The challenge of how to get the lumen caps in the original parcel.
I don't think we ever really came to.
So we're just going with the 2012 version.
We're staying with 2012. However, there's a companion thing which is doing the additions on properties, and I said I would come up with an idea for that, and I did some work on it at lunchtime today of a direction that maybe we could go in, and I could pass that out to committee members and staff. And I highlighted in the yellow change. Currently, if we're doing a addition of less than 25%, it requires a complete inventory of the site. And that's a real burden for many projects. So we have the exception that allows 5-acre larger developments to put in 3 full cutoff luminaires without doing that. That doesn't help a whole lot, but it would on some conditions. So the idea would be have a second exception. And the proposal is, and I think we do need to work on the wording to make sure that the idea, the underlying idea is that you have a large site, you're going to do in a small addition on the site, less than 25%. So instead of inventorying the entire site, what you would do is draw a developed area for that permitted construction. And it would only be the area that work is being done on, but it could include building area as well as site area.
So this is an attempt to help address the feedback we've been getting over the last few months from those developing a large mall.
That's right. And so what it would then say is, now that you've drawn that developed area, you would have to agree to mitigate all of the non-cutoff lights within the developed area. So
they get to control, if they want to try and capture more possible lumens, they do a bigger area. But they can survey a smaller area if they want.
They could, but it's really related to what they're building. So if someone is remodeling or adding on to a building, they're putting 5,000 square feet on the building, and they're maneuvering the sidewalks and everything around that building, and
So I like the
spaces. You have to kind of follow the work.
I like the concept. How do we get this out? Enough
Well, I think
to
this
get,
needs
to get people give us feedback on how the wording needs to be right.
Well, I guess for now, I would propose that it would go to Amy and she would include it in the draft.
But then we need to get that draft out to the public.
And then it's been the draft, then it would have to go out with others. I think before it goes to Amy, I think the 3 of us could, or 4 of us, with Daniel, could decide if we need to
Okay, you wanna do that now?
adjust that word if you want to. Because that was the one other thing that we hadn't gotten to.
There's one question in the chat as well, whenever you guys get a chance for transition.
Is that done in call of the audience or is it done now?
Is it related to what we're discussing?
The balance would be call of the audience that will be
Okay.
correct. Thank you.
Get to that soon. Hey, seems fine to me, but I would like, somebody who's more worried about
Yeah,
misinterpretation, to look at it.
so if that needs to be vetted through astronomy and this.
Well, I just think if we make it public, somebody
Yeah, I
sit with that time.
I guess my thinking is by tying it to the area of work that's on the permit, it would tend to restrict. So somebody wouldn't just arbitrarily make too big of a line and go up to, but not include
Well, I mean,
other existing lights on the site. Such,
I'd like somebody who's paranoid to imagine what's the worst gerrymandering that could happen. And then I suspect it's not that bad.
my sense is that it would help the development and that if anybody tries to take advantage of it, they'll be doing it by just not following the intent of it anyway. And I mean, if we can alter the wording to make it more clear than it is, but,
Well, the other thing is, it's my understanding is it's not that many big parcels, so we have to deal with this. But if we go back,
well,
my memory is it was Reed Park, and the food was the example, one of the examples it was that we kept talking about it. I think this would solve that.
Let me be clear, though. I didn't actually say that this applied to big parcels.
What's the 5 acres?
No, that's an exception number one.
Oh,
This is exception number two. So it could be a smaller parcel, you could use the same method. Based on what I'm proposing.
okay, but I don't want to create a whole bunch of work for the city and county people reviewing this. I mean,
Well, it
if
may
you
not be
imagine,
a-
if you imagine the parcel was this big, and somebody wanted to do an inventory for just a third of it, you don't want to do that.
Well, but if that's a matter.
It's not that hard to do an inventory of something that's. We have 4
Yeah,
lights.
yeah, so what will happen is people will make decisions that's favorable to them as they're designing that project. But it could be a 3 acre parcel, maybe even a 1 acre parcel that had a lot of. That's maybe where it becomes less favorable to the dark environment. In that if somebody had a site that had a lot of bad light on it, but wanted to do a small addition, you could draw a line around your small addition and make that be good, but you're not gonna be putting very many lumens in if you're drawing a tight, small line.
Okay,
I guess that's why I think that balances out the abuse that might happen
Okay.
otherwise. So
I'll think about it.
I just think we just haven't had it written down. But I think it's generally what we had talked about before.
Members, if I may, this is
Yeah.
Clayton, with the city of Tucson, to the point of posting and, making, it public to get comments. I would highly recommend that we finalize that final draft, and consolidated all of these, proposals into one document, that we can post and disseminate and then receive public comment for a few weeks.
Strongly support.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And what I'm gonna do is, get this to Amy and have her include it in final draft. That may come on.
this is Dan. I agree with Clayton. I think that's a great idea. Again, this, reading this now honesty in section 2, I think makes it easier for county and city staff.
Okay, good.
I think it does too, because you could actually review, you have a more focused thing to review and not looking at a whole lot of other information. I think you're gonna see people taking advantage of it. And the question is, does it let people get away with more lighting? I don't think so, as long as it doesn't let them decide on an overly aggressive, expansive developed area.
Right.
But I could see if somebody, say, makes a decision to restripe a parking lot and they're doing it under that permit, well, then that parking lot's included. But then it should include all those existing lights that are all.
So what happens for the more than 25%?
So then it reverts to the 402.1, which says that you have to bring the whole thing up to current.
So there's a way then of avoiding that, where you, 1 month you do 25%. Next month you do another 24%, next month you do another 4%. So you get the whole 100% done by 4 different filings.
I suppose you would, but if you're actually applying this as you're going through,
They would bring it up.
every time you're eliminating non-cutoff fixtures, everything that would go in under this exception would be the full cutoff fixture.
Okay.
It would still have the correct, all the color temperature limitations because it says comply, well, maybe, okay, so maybe the paragraph 5 is something we should work on. Instead of just saying the lumen limits, maybe we should say comply with, the requirements of chapter 4. That's lumen caps, it's curfews, it's color temperature, it's all those things.
I would appreciate trying that and see if somebody objects, if that makes more sense to me.
Requirements of chapter 4.
And that means the first part of the total amount. Delete that, it's just the lighting within this developed area, right? The outdoor lighting.
The outdoor lighting within this developed area shall comply with the requirements of chapter 4.
Sounds good.
And then that includes all those things. So now, well, full cutoff isn't gonna really have a curfew on it. But it could invoke the automatic dimming.
So are we, is there anything else, or are we ready to go to call to the audience?
So our agenda item number 3 is future meeting schedule.
Okay.
And
As
I would
good as
say-
you possibly can.
yeah, on that point, we need to get this draft actually.
Do we know, I know Amy had personal reason, I think, why she couldn't make it today. Do you know whether, on what time so it's resolved and never back?
No, I do not know.
She said she had surgery on the 20th, right, or right around, a little after the 20th. She said she'd be available in February.
Well,
According to
days
the
from
email
now,
I have.
2 days from now is February, so.
Right,
But
which
you think,
surprises. me.
okay. All right.
We can, I would suggest that we do a doodle poll for the next few months and try to get monthly meetings. If we need to meet sooner.
So I'm
than
very sensitive,
monthly.
that we're like 3 years behind where people wanted us to be, so. How do you guys feel? Meeting in 3 weeks or something rather than.
Well, I'm okay for the sooner meeting. I think it's key though on when Amy can get the draft put together. When that's ready to go, then that should go out for distribution. We need a couple weeks for feedback. Then we can have a meeting at that time. So once the draft is out, for sure, we could.
Okay, so I guess that is then more than a month probably, but we need to figure out how to get the draft out in the next 3 weeks.
Yes, this is Dan. I mean, as soon as we get the draft out, better, so we get it out for the public comment. So, I believe you will, we've been doing this for a long time. now.
Everybody's been trying,
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that.
Yeah, no, I know, yeah.
Those that are for a long time. It'd be nice to at least get the draft, final draft out, so we can comments, and then hopefully get it.
I really, I think having a phone conversation with Amy is the way to go to find out where she is. Because she's the one running this based upon the meetings that we've had in subcommittee.
I understand that, that's great. I mean, there is, it's what we do.
Right.
I'm just saying, the first step is that. And once you draft them, I think you can draft these go out in a couple of weeks for comments. That wasn't one of the complaints we've had in the past. The draft and then out for sure the bigger time. You know that.
This is Clayton, one addition to what Dan stated, if we could get the draft, say, 2 weeks in advance of the next meeting,
Yeah.
it would give everyone an opportunity to have, you know, an informed discussion
Yeah,
at the meeting. So if we could schedule the next meeting, say, for 4 weeks, that would require that the draft is done in 2.
Right, so my suggestion is we figure out who's gonna get in touch with Amy as soon as we know when she can come in. Then Amy, she sends out the poll for 2 weeks after that and later.
So, Bill, I'm going to send what we were talking about, this proposal to Amy in the email, and I will tell her what we just said about scheduling, and we'll see how she
Sounds
responds. I'm sure she will respond.
I know he wants to, he can do it soon.
I didn't get the sense from her reason for being away that it was too big a deal. But other than that, I don't know. Okay, so I guess we could move to the next agenda item, which is call for the audience.
Two more points on the schedule discussion. Please also to consider what time might be best, if we should continue to do 5:30. Doodle poll on day is one thing, but also time, whatever
So-
works best for you
So I
guys.
couldn't make the other evening meeting. Was it better attended than this one? Or, I mean,
Yeah. I would say it's really a matter of what works for you guys.
I want the public to feel like.
Other than me getting here actually on time at 5:30, I like 5:30 better. But I can do the other.
Okay.
What advice do you have for us on how we reach more people?
I think posting and distributing the final draft electronically for open comment is really how to engage them, not necessarily timing the meeting for attendance. And then the other point I just wanted to touch on is to verify that we want to continue with hybrid meetings moving forward. There's just a point of clarification, the council has requested that each of the boards and committees have a conversation about whether it be hybrid or only in
Did they
person.
express an opinion for or against hybrid?
It's completely up to the board.
I personally favor hybrid because it's more inclusive, because there's some people that can't,
I'm on the building code committee, and we decided that the committee members would attend in person, but the meeting would still be accessible. So people would have yes, others wouldn't have to attend.
Daniel,
In real time.
Daniel, is that a burden on you? Can you make it if we pick the right date?
I will make it whenever I'm needed.
So how do you feel about it?
I'm retired, I can go and do it.
So I think we're proposing the committee should be here in person with staff, but we'll have a Zoom option.
Thank you. Appreciate the clarification.
All right, call the audience.
So, Angie, when you put the doodle polls out, could you give us options for, say, our morning time and evening time as well?
Yes,
And that might help. So
Just to make sure we get a quorum in. We don't want you to have to send out 5 different groups.
Okay, item 4, call to the audience, and I believe we did have somebody with the chat.
Correct. Two questions, Ben Bueller Garcia, regarding section 4, motion sensing. Here, I can put it up here, actually, good idea. Motion sensing controls, do these rules apply to single family residents and multifamily housing?
As written, they may, because
Yeah, but I think your intention all along was conversing about commercial.
yeah, well, the intention is one thing, but it's important what it actually says. That's a very reasonable question.
And then someone actually replied to that, a single family residence structure grading permit in Pima County is 14,000 square feet. Do I understand? Oh, no, actually, this is different. Sorry, go ahead with this.
Separate question.
Separate question, sorry, I
Okay,
confused you.
yeah,
We'll go
let's-
back here.
Let's finish the first one.
So I think, well, I don't know if we're supposed to have a discussion on call of the audience, but I think that's something that.
We're allowed to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, or note and bring it back.
If we can, my feeling is that there definitely should be an exception for single family residences.
So I didn't understand what the call.
Okay, if you, we put a new requirement in to have motion sensing controls on large area lighting that's mounted above a certain mounting height.
Yeah.
And covering certain large areas. Multifamily is, perhaps appropriate to apply that, for the same reasons it's appropriate in other commercial areas, but the lights do automatically come up to full brightness when there's occupancy, but when there isn't, then they back down.
You capture that question for Amy and
Yeah, I will do.
maybe a subcommittee figures it out.
Yeah, in my opinion, based upon that question, I'd say no. Rules don't apply to single family housing, single family housing. But it might apply, it is not, it doesn't apply to, multi-family housing units. But doesn't mean it can't.
Like
be apartment houses, yeah.
Let me try to review that, put some words to it. I'll go to Craig and Amy with that, so we'll do our own discussion, and then we'll get that in the draft to address that issue.
Daniel, were you trying to say something?
No,
Okay. Ben, they're gonna document that question, add some context and some more support to it, and then distribute the answer out as well. Second question, a single family residential structure grading permit is in Pima County is for 14,000 square feet. Do I understand you correctly? When you propose lighting up to 70% of a 2-acre parcel or 60,984 feet, or up to 78,408 square feet of a 3-acre parcel. That seems very generous, to say the least.
Well, my sense is that those would be maximum numbers allowed by zoning, but the actual area that would be calculated would be the developed area based on where the construction work is actually happening on the project. So if someone were to develop that full 70%, yes, you'd be able to apply lighting to that. But if their project did not develop that full square footage and less, then the project would be limited to what the developed area is.
But I think they're asking is grading and developing. Just a greater property than developing.
I don't think you're allowed to do that. In all cases, that's the reason that there the limits on.
But maybe we can ask them to clarify their question. Like,
Yeah, Christina, can you maybe clarify your question a little bit for us?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. In the chart, you talk about, the amount of acreage that you would allow lighting, for 1, 2, 3, 4, and up to 5 acre parcels. And with a 4 acre parcel, you allow over 50% of the 2 acres to be lit. That's not in compliance with the zoning codes or any of the permitting processes for single-family structures. Now, that might be something that would apply again, much like your previous discussion, to multifamily structures, which I agree with that, but certainly not with single-family homes. And I think perhaps you want to be more specific in how you characterize that, because not only is it a violation of the permitting and zoning codes, but it's just, it's a lot of light for a single-family residence. There's no single-family residence that, covers 2 acres of a 4 acre parcel. Well, maybe there's one, I don't know. I shouldn't say that. But that's not the norm at all. And that's not the code.
Yeah, it's not clarified at 14,000 square feet. You can grade on any property as long as it's not hillside development zone up to 14,000 square feet without meeting the type 1.
Actually, those regs have changed. Grading, grubbing, clearing of any kind is now regulated. Because of the conservation plan in Pima County, you can't just go out and grade anything just because you own it. You have to get a permit, and the permits are very specific. So there's no grubbing allowed, no clearing of the lot. None of that is allowed. The building envelope is very specific and has to be carefully detailed. And again, the grading permit for a single family structure, which includes the driveway and any developed area on the site, is 14,000 square feet.
Christine, if you go over 14,000, you have to get a type 2 or type 1 maintenance permit. You are allowed to grade more than 14,000 square feet.
If you get a special permit for that, which then is also regulated.
That's what the type 1 permit is 14,000 square feet.
Yeah, that's type 1.
That's type 1 that kicks in there.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding you. It's very garbled, but could you repeat that, please?
I said the 14,000 square feet is where the type 1 grading permit requirements kick in.
No, actually, you can't build a structure without a grading permit. Grading is not allowed without a permit. And that 14,000 square feet is the type 1 permit. Up to that, beyond that is the type 2.
Okay, may I have that backwards? I apologize, but that's where it comes from, is the limits. And you're correct, a permit is required, but I just want to clarify, you are allowed to grade more than 14,000 square feet on the lot in certain situations.
It depends on whether you're in the conservation land system or not. And in fact,
In certain situations, I'm not saying in all situations. I just don't want people to be confused thinking that 14,000 square feet is all that you can grade on a residential property. That's
Well,
all.
you're also giving people the impression that they can grade at will up to,
I misspoke there. You're absolutely right. You need a grading permit. I just was trying to point out that the 14,000 square feet is not the maximum you can grade on certain residential permits.
well, I just think it would be useful to put in a disclaimer that suggests that the grading permit requirements need to be observed. I would also suggest, just for the public, that you acknowledge that if the parcel is in the conservation land system, either in the multiple use or the biological core or the scientific categories, that also limits certain development. For instance, in the biological core, 80% is set aside. So that limits grading, and it is going to limit lighting to some extent too. And what you're suggesting here is that if somebody has a 4 acre parcel, they can basically grade 50% of it. And I don't think that's what you mean to suggest, but I do think that it might be appropriate to better clarify that.
I think I'm understanding a little bit of where you're going, but I think that any suggestions in the lighting code that you would be allowed to do more grading or whatever is the cart moving the horse. In this case, the amount of lighting that we go in would be entirely dependent on the developed area in the submission. And that is going to be reviewed by county or city officials to be compliant with all the other zoning stuff.
Yes, I want to thank Christina for raising this point, because it leads me to the following question. Is the part that she's highlighting a revision from the 2012 code or a legacy of the 2012 code?
It's the percentages.
Is a revision. So I think we
It's
should
a
look-
revision and it's in red in the new draft. So that's why I just thought maybe perhaps you'd want to clarify it somewhat.
Yeah, I agree, and I think what we want to do is with informed by this, we should reread it and.
Yeah.
But I also agree with Dennis that we don't want to get too explicit in highlighting things in other codes, because then they change and then we cause confusion. So the intent, Dennis, of this part was just to help people understand how they figure out what their developed area is, corresponding lighting, right, as a function of size of parcel. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I think we can take a stab at that one.
Great, thanks Christina for helping explain a little bit more.
I had one other question, if I might just ask it since it's in the chat.
Sure.
The draft continues to use the 3000 Kelvin level and the best available science. And I did submit to Ian all of the articles from the June Science magazine, which was primarily devoted to artificial light at night and covered a multitude of the data on plants, animals, and humans effects. And I appreciate you're moving much more to the narrowband or other amber lights. I appreciate that that has been acknowledged. But I just don't understand why you are at 3000 as opposed to a lesser amount, which the astronomical community has commented on, which I have commented on and others have commented on, and which gives adequate, safe lighting, although it's not as bright as it, it's not daylight lighting, but it's adequate and it's safe. The whole point of the language that you inserted, which was that light would be only as bright as necessary, only lighting the areas necessary, the language that was adopted by you in the new draft, from the astronomical community and from the dark skies principles, 5 principles, I just don't get it. Did any of you have a chance to review the articles I submitted?
I never saw, this is great.
This is Clayton, with the city of Tucson. Let me just clarify that those documents were received, but have not been distributed to the members because they were distributed after we ended the last comment period. We'll open a new comment period as soon as we receive a new final draft, and we'll distribute all comments to the committee members at the
So
time.
Christina, we will review the articles, and also I'm going to ask my colleagues to comment because I wasn't at the last meeting. Usually when we recommend a color temperature that might be higher than you would like, or that some of us would like, it has to do with what's the availability of options for fixtures and for the people that actually find things to install in lighting. So I'd love Dennis to correct them.
Well, I appreciate that. And we discussed that. That was discussed at the last meeting, which I was attending. I submitted those articles to Ian. And the draft that I got in the email says it's the final draft. So I guess I'm confused.
Well, we've had multiple final drafts and then people comment on the final draft and we are persuaded that they're good comments and it generates a good draft.
It's garnered.
It's a pre-fine.
So.
Okay, well, that's
No,
great.
I could
No
address
problem,
that.
and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. If you would, I mean, I very much appreciate the expertise of the committee. And I've been very impressed with the level of discussion. I submitted those articles from the summer edition of Science Magazine for your specific perusal because I felt you would understand and appreciate it. So I am looking forward to any comments or revisions you might care to make after you have had a chance to look at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think we should, not only should we look at those, but I'd like. to
Yeah, but they haven't distributed.
I know, but I'd like to-
We're operating.
Am I right that the 3,000 street department is availability? or is that-
Well, it is, but the other issue that's brought up is you don't need 3,000 Kelvin to be safe and adequate.
Right.
But people choose to build things sometimes that are not just for the purpose of being safe and adequate, but they have aesthetic function, they have other reasons that they want to build things. And it's very limiting when all you can do with lighting is make it safe and adequate. And we do have to have a compromise to allow people to develop and use outdoor light in a manner that provides aesthetic beauty and enhances the look of the buildings and does more than just to have a bland, safe and adequate installation. Now, the whole point is where do you draw the line? You drive up the road to Phoenix and things are pretty bright and glary all over the place, and we don't want to become that. I think there'd be a lot of pushback if we became Flagstaff also. So there's there's been an awful lot of pushback just to the concept of dropping the boom cap at all. And I think we're making substantial progress as to where we have it compared to where it is the previous.
Right.
So I'm not too enthused of further limiting the color temperature that I've already proposed. And I think even though I'm really representing the development community, I'm on the fringe of going as far as I have.
Thanks.
One last question online. Why is proposed light trespass section silent on residential to commercial property and residential to residential property? This came up at the public forum in Green Valley last week and was supported by many attendees.
So I'm sorry, I'm slow tonight. Is the question that the questioner is saying we're not addressing a residence infringing on a commercial property?
Residence to residence.
And residents to residents. I see. So in some ways, I think I can answer that based on the history of how this lumen cap code got developed. First of all, the allowable lumen caps for commercial are substantially higher per acre than they are for residential property. And you're further limited on residential property because of some of the area limits. So we felt it was a natural advantage of big dog versus little dog, commercial and residential. So we put in the rules about mounting heights and such to try to tone down the commercial on residential side. We just haven't been exposed to any complaints from commercial properties complaining about adjacent residences.
What about residential to residential?
Now, residential to residential, they're already, because the lumen caps are there already, that's a limitation. The other thing that I think is
we're worried about is constraint compliance.
yeah, and there already is the wording about aiming flood style lights at 45-degree maximum. I mean, it's widely ignored along with color temperature in residential. But there already are provisions for residential.
Does that answer your question adequately or?
Well, this is Kent Blumenthal, and thank you for that, for addressing it. But it does not address it in a way that deals with the practicality and what actually happens on the ground in residential areas that I'm familiar with. There actually is a lot of complaints in various neighborhoods, particularly in unincorporated Pima County, where there's light trespass, and it's also involved situations where a homeowner has installed lighting that would be in violation of even the 2012 initial code, but it's very specific lighting, and it wouldn't trigger some 25% of a remodel or remake, but it is a very exacting trespass on other residences, and it may well, in some instances, I'm aware of that I've heard and seen these complaints more locally, where it would be considered, I would think, a major detraction from night sky. In other words, even certain lights pointed into the sky, and yet the lumen count would be so low, but it could be pointed in a way that's towards the sky and towards other homes, towards their windows and like. And what I've also seen, and I know people who have experienced this, is when a complaint was filed originally with their HOA, the HOA board defaulted to, well, that home was built prior to 2012, and we are going to give that home a variance because of even though the light is a lamp or lumens that they put in now trespass or in violation or pointed wrong, it still is grandfathered in. And frankly, I found that there's some problem with that. So when I was reading the proposed new code, frankly, I was surprised that the whole residential thing, and I do not know of a firsthand of a residential to commercial, though I would think that it is possible to have occurred, but in residential to residential, man, it happens all the time.
You know, I
What's the
understand.
downside of adding a residential to residential section? Is there, I wasn't here, I guess, when I was.
Yeah, okay, I guess I'll just give my opinion on it, which is that we need revisions that are in our draft adopted, and if we keep chipping away at it, addressing more things, we're never going to get updated. We're going to keep staying on 2012. I think this committee isn't planning on going to sleep after we get this edition going, and we are aware of these other issues. Maybe we can in the future address them. But what I heard from this last comment fundamentally was installations that are not code compliant that are creating problems. And I agree, I see that all over the place.
So you think that, so you think that it might be helpful later to add a resident light trespass mechanism, but already this kind of lighting could be, somebody could just file a complaint about it.
Well, what I'm hearing is people have glaring lights that are shining on their neighbors. And to start with, the 45-degree angle of the fixture would mitigate a great great deal of that, and it's not being respected. The other thing that's happening, and it happens every single day, a formerly compliant old light that was legal when it was put in years or decades ago gets replaced with an LED light. When that light, the old light gets replaced with the new fixture, it's supposed to, by our ordinance, fully comply with code. But people don't get permits to do this, they don't get inspected. And because they're ignorant about lighting, they buy the wrong kind of light fixture. Some people, even if they knew about it, would care and do the right thing, they may still do the wrong thing. Other people don't care and
So
don't want
one
to care.
person like this through,
I don't know how
that happens, but no, so,
there'd have to be some point.
okay, so even without a light trespass discussion in the code, the neighbor could complain about that and say it's not compliant to code.
I believe so. If,
Okay.
I think they'd have to file a complaint and then
I see.
city or county would have to go out and investigate. And if they find a 4,000 Kelvin light or a 5,000 or a 6,000 Kelvin light, which somebody bought at a hardware store or someplace like that, it doesn't, or on.
Okay, so I'm okay deferring the discussion of president to discuss with the future. Because in practice, there already is a mechanism. Adding something to the code might advertise that, but if I'm looking at everybody that was nodding, it sounds like if my neighbor introduced a new ball that suddenly is illuminating my bedroom.
This is Clayton, I would love to jump in on that.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon in the city, for us to see folks that replace sconce fixtures with floodlights.
Right.
And things like that with the misunderstanding that because there's an existing outlet box there, that they can replace the fixture without a permit. And there is unpermitted work that is non-compliant that I believe is causing some of.
But if they ask for the permit for that, it would get rejected, right?
Yeah, they'd have to tell what.
We're justifying
it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we really have the mechanism there, but you've got a general public that's unaware they have to get permits or chooses not to.
In one of the previous meetings, there was much discussion about once this is a code, there needs to be an education component to the citizens, because like you say, I don't know much about movements, Kelvin, all that stuff, but I went to Home Depot and I went to Lowe's and there's all these floodlights and all these other lights that exceed all the lumens in a year. And so people think they're doing a good thing, modernizing their light, but it's too bright. So to me, I'm thinking that's the purpose of updating the code.
It is certainly one of the main reasons we keep trying to improve wording and clarify things, is to make it easier for people to voluntarily comply, because that's better than having go around trying to enforce them. But I also empathize with Dennis's point that
All you have to do in that section is add both commercial or residential property abutting residential property.
I'd like you to ask Amy and subcommittee if you're going to do that, Dennis. There really is that. There's no unintended obligations of this section.
Yeah, this is Dan. I'd like to also point out something that gets missed, I think, quite often is fixtures within 25 feet of residential lot lines are required for cutoff. So here in subdivision, the neighbor puts a spotlight.
It's not compliant.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, any other audience?
As I said, I don't understand lighting much, but I understand regulations and development. And I had a question about the exception that you had.
Can you state your name for the record for me?
Dean Dolan,
Thank you.
Neighborhood Association.
And did you sign in? Yes, I think.
So with the exception one, my, it says, not more than 3 full cutoff luminaires, may be installed for permit. But then it says not more than 10 such full cutoff luminaires may be installed for this exception. So I'm curious why it says 3, but then it allows 10.
So when that went in the previous edition of the code, the debate was, well, if people can keep adding 3 and 3 and 3 and 3, eventually they can put an infinite number of lights in, and without ever having to move the cap. So to put that argument to rest, we said, well, over the life of the building, then you can only add up to 10 for that exception, because there's no other check against lumen caps if you're taking that exception. Now, the reason for that exception was that sometimes you may have an existing large building, say a hospital, and they do an internal remodel. And by having done that, they maybe need to develop a new exit door to leave the building. They turn a room that was offices, they turn it into a conference room, and now needs another exit to the outside. When you exit the outside, you have to have illumination at the exit discharge landing where you step and you get out of the building. So you have to put a light in it. There isn't enough light there already. And so someone's gonna put a door in for a purpose like that and then have to inventory every light on the whole site. That didn't seem fair. That's why we put the first exception.
Okay, that's a good explanation. I was just confused.
That is why it
Between
happened
the
that
3
way.
and the 10. My second comment has to do about the drafts. I also received this draft, and I have no idea. It's final, pre-final, or which number draft it is.
I didn't bring one with me today because I didn't know which one to print.
So does it, the version you have the date on it?
No, I
We'll make sure.
We will make sure the meetings I've been coming to, I think I have 4 or 5 different drafts.
So the last one that I was responsible for preparing, we had the date. We just need to get to Amy to make sure she puts the date on it.
The only dates are 2021, 2022, 2023. That's, you know,
I think we've had multiple out in 2023.
Yeah, we did, but we'll make sure this next one has a date, and we'll also, maybe we can add a line that says to be considered at the meeting and the date of the meeting, and then that'll tell you that it's the one for that meeting.
thank you.
I think there was just one follow-up question, and you guys may have addressed it, but John had a question of why does the draft LLC not simply define what light trespass is and then generally prohibit it regardless of land use?
I don't think any of us are smart enough to exactly know what light trespass is. I mean, there are some jurisdictions that have rules that say that at the property line, you can have no more than a certain number of foot candles, or on a vertical element at the property line, no more than so many foot candles. That would require a photometric study to be done and submitted on every project. That had been discussed in 2012 and prior editions of this code, and the committee felt that was requiring, it was too much of a burden for all projects, particularly small projects, to have to do that lighting analysis. It's costly to hire an engineer to have to do that. So we didn't go there. We thought that by having prescriptive rules, like how high the fixture could be, does it have to be cut off, a full cutoff fixture within a certain distance, those types of things would provide a good deal of mitigation trespass rules without forcing everybody to do all that engineering analysis in every project. Thank you. That's the answer. Okay, I think we're at the end of our agenda, so I need a motion for adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I tell you.
Six 36 for the record.
I would say we don't need a second. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
You know, Ed,